The morphine drip had exactly 4 minutes of fluid remaining. Lieutenant Kira Okonma watched the clear liquid descend through translucent tubing as the Marine in bed 7 whimpered in his medicated sleep. For minutes, until she would need to calculate another dose, verify another patient identification band, document another controlled substance administration. For minutes, until the 18 wounded men in this tent needed her again. What none of them knew, what nobody in this field hospital knew, was that before Kira had learned to calibrate 4 drips and interpret vital signs, she had learned to calculate windage and elevation, to verify targets at 800 meters, to document kills with a single squeeze of a trigger. The night air at forward operating base skin carried the smell of diesel fuel and antiseptic. Kira moved between beds with practiced efficiency, her boots silent on the plywood flooring. Each patient received the same meticulous attention. Wound dressing checks, vital sign assessments, medication reconciliation. The rhythm of night shift nursing had become as natural to her as breathing over the past 3 years. Bed 7 stirred again. Lance Corporal Devin Hastings, 22 years old, shrapnel wounds from an IED strike 3 days prior. Kira approached his bedside and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. His eyes opened, glazed with pain and medication. "It hurts," he managed to say. "I know," Kira replied softly. "Your next dose is in 3 minutes. Can you hold on for me?" He nodded, jaw clenched. She stayed beside him, her presence a small comfort against the waves of pain. This was why she had chosen nursing after everything else. These moments, the ability to ease suffering instead of causing it. The tent flap opened and Dr. Ramon Vega entered, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. 48 hours on call with minimal sleep had turned his normally sharp demeanor brittle. "Status?" he asked without preamble. Kira ran through each patient with clinical precision. Hastings, bed 7, pain management adequate. Kowalski, bed 3, post-operative vital stable. Patterson, bed 11, showing signs of infection, culture sent, awaiting results. She continued through all 18 cases, every detail committed to memory. Vega nodded, rubbing his eyes. "You have everything under control as always. I will be in my quarters if anything changes. Get some rest, doctor." He left without further comment. Kira understood. They were all running on fumes at this isolated outpost. The medical staff of 12 supported a base of 200 soldiers positioned 15 kilometers from the Pakistan border. Resources stretched thin, personnel exhausted, but the wounded kept coming. A younger voice called from the supply area. "Hey LT, we are low on 4x4s and the saline stock is getting critical." Petty Officer Danny Chan emerged carrying inventory sheets. 20 years old, fresh-faced, eager to prove himself. He had arrived at FOB Skin 6 weeks ago, his first deployment. Kira had taken him under her wing immediately. Something about his earnest dedication reminded her of people she had known before. People who had not made a home. "I will put in the supply request tonight," Kira said. "We should receive the next convoy in 4 days if the roads stay clear." Danny nodded, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you stay so calm? I mean, some of these injuries, the things these guys have been through. It gets to me sometimes." Kira met his eyes. The honest answer involved things she could not tell him. Calm came from perspective, from having seen worse, from having caused worse. Instead, she said, "You focus on what you can control. Right now, you can control the quality of care you provide. That is enough. Before we continue with the rest of the night, drop a comment and let us know what state you are watching from. Maybe you have witnessed medical professionals who went above and beyond in your community." Danny seemed to absorb this, then returned to his inventory work. Kira checked her watch. Time to administer Hastings his pain medication. She prepared the injection with the same precise movements she had once used to chamber rounds. Measure twice. Verify 3 times. Execute once. As she administered the medication, the overhead lights flickered. Just a brief stutter in the power. The generator outside coughed, then resumed its steady rhythm. Kira paused, hand still on the 4 line. Her awareness expanded beyond the immediate bedside. That flicker had been unusual. Head nurse Margaret Rousseau appeared from the administrative area, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun despite the late hour. She had been military nursing for 27 years and possessed the unshakable competence that came with that experience. "Everything all right with the power?" Margaret asked. "Generator Hiccup," Kira replied. Backup systems engaged properly. Margaret studied her for a moment. "You have been checking the security monitors again." It was not a question. Kira did not bother denying it, just maintaining situational awareness. "This is a field hospital, not a combat outpost. We have perimeter security for that." The perimeter security consists of 8 guards for a 2-kilometer fence line, Kira thought, but did not say. Instead, she simply nodded. "Old habits." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "I know you transferred here from somewhere with a different operational tempo, but you need to find a way to relax. This constant vigilance is not healthy." If only she knew. Kira had not transferred from another hospital. Her path to this tent had been far less conventional. But her personnel file showed a standard nursing career progression, and that was enough for most people. They saw what they expected to see: a skilled nurse. Nothing more. "I will work on it," Kira said, ending the conversation. Margaret returned to her paperwork. Kira continued her rounds, but her mind was already parsing the power flicker. Generators at FOB Skin were maintained rigorously. Unexplained hiccups were rare. Probably nothing, but probably was not certainty. At 0200 hours, Kira took her break in the small staff area. She poured coffee that had been sitting on the burner for 6 hours and tasted like battery acid. While she drank, she allowed herself to look at the photograph she kept in her pocket. 4 faces in desert camouflage. Younger versions of people who had been more than teammates. The photo was creased from handling, edges worn soft. She put it away before anyone could see and walked to the small window that overlooked the northern perimeter. The base spread out before her in the darkness, illuminated by scattered floodlights. Guard towers at the corners. Vehicle depot to the east. Command center south. And beyond the fence line, the vast Afghan darkness where anything could be hiding. Her eyes tracked the shadows automatically, looking for movement patterns, identifying dead zones in the lighting, calculating sight lines. Another nurse might see a quiet night. Kira saw a defensive position with inadequate coverage and too many approach vectors. She noticed a vehicle then. A local contractor truck parked near the eastern fence, closer than usual. The driver stood outside, visible in the dim light, apparently checking something on the engine. Except his movements were wrong. Too deliberate. Too focused on the fence line rather than his vehicle. Kira watched for 3 full minutes. The driver never once opened the hood, never looked at the engine. But he did produce what appeared to be a cell phone and seemed to be taking photographs of the fence configuration and guard positions. Her pulse remained steady. No spike of adrenaline. Just cool assessment. She pulled out her own phone and documented what she was seeing, including timestamps. Then she continued watching until the driver finally climbed back into his truck and departed. When she returned to the ward, Danny was checking on a patient who had started coughing. Kira joined him, evaluated the situation, adjusted the soldier's position to ease his breathing. The work continued, but in the back of her mind, the photograph of the fence line remained. At 0400, with 2 hours remaining in her shift, Kira made her final rounds. Hastings slept peacefully, pain-controlled. Kowalski's vitals remained stable. Patterson's fever had broken. 18 men breathing. 18 hearts beating. Her responsibility until the day's shift arrived. She was updating the medication log when the lights flickered again. Longer this time. 3 full seconds of darkness before the backup engaged. In that brief moment of blackness, Kira's hand had moved to her hip where a sidearm would have been carried in her previous life. The gesture was instinctive, invisible in the dark, abandoned before the lights returned. But the flicker had been accompanied by something else. A sound, distant, muffled by the tent walls and the generator noise, but unmistakable to someone who had heard it before. The distinct percussion of an explosion, far enough away to be barely audible, but close enough to matter. Kira walked calmly to the entrance and stepped outside. The night appeared normal. Guards in their positions. No alarms. No activity. But somewhere beyond the fence line, something had detonated. She knew this with absolute certainty. Tomorrow she would file a report with base security. She would document what she had seen. The suspicious vehicle. The fence line reconnaissance. The explosion. They might listen or they might dismiss it as paranoia from an overworked nurse. Either way, she would have done her duty. She returned to her patients, completed her documentation, and prepared for shift change. At 0600, the day shift nurses arrived and Kira provided her detailed handoff. 18 patients. Current status. Pending concerns. Treatment plans. Everything in perfect order. As she walked to her quarters through the early morning light, exhaustion settled into her bones. Another shift complete. Another night of lives preserved. She should feel satisfied. Instead, she felt the familiar weight of awareness. The sense that something was building just beyond her ability to see it clearly. In her small room, Kira secured the door and allowed herself 5 minutes. 5 minutes to be something other than the calm, competent nurse everyone expected. She sat on her bunk and looked again at the photograph. 4 faces. 3 of them dead now. Only she remained. The last time she had ignored a feeling like this, people had died. The last time she had trusted that someone else was handling security, her team had walked into an ambush. The last time she had been just a Marine following orders instead of trusting her instincts. She had lost everything that mattered. She would not make that mistake again. Whatever was happening at FOB Skin, whether real threat or phantom fear, she would be ready. Because being a nurse did not erase what she had been before. It just gave her something worth protecting. Sleep came in fragments. Kira drifted through memories she had spent 3 years trying to bury. The dreams were always the same. Desert heat shimmering off sand. The weight of the M110 rifle against her shoulder. The rhythm of her breathing synchronized with her heartbeat. 2 beats between shots. Inhale. Exhale. Squeeze. She had been Sergeant Kira Okama then. Marine Scout Sniper. 3rd deployment. 89 confirmed kills. The numbers had stopped meaning anything after the first 20. They became data points. Threat assessments. Problems solved at distance. Her spotter had been Corporal James Rivera, the man in the photograph who always smiled too wide for the camera. He handled the calculations while she handled the trigger. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, elevation. They had worked together for 2 years and developed the kind of unspoken communication that kept people alive in impossible situations. The mission had been routine. Overwatch for a convoy moving through Helmand Province. Intelligence reported the route clear. Kira and Rivera positioned on a ridgeline with commanding views of the valley below. Standard protection detail. They had done it dozens of times. The convoy rolled through without incident. Kira was tracking the last vehicle through her scope when Rivera spotted movement. 300 meters east. A figure emerging from a compound, carrying something long and cylindrical. RPG. Clear hostile intent. Clear shot. Kira acquired the target. Center mass. Steady wind. Easy range. Her finger rested on the trigger. But something made her pause. The figure moved wrong. Too small. Too hesitant. She shifted her aim slightly and saw the face through her scope. A boy, maybe 14 years old, holding the weapon like he had been forced to carry it. She hesitated. 3 seconds. 4. Rivera was calling a shot. Hostile with RPG. Engage. But Kira could not pull the trigger. Could not add a child to her count. Those 3 seconds cost everything. The boy dropped the weapon and ran. Kira relaxed. Crisis averted. Then the compound erupted with automatic weapons fire from positions they had not identified. The boy had been bait. The real threat had been waiting for them to reveal their position. Rivera took 3 rounds in the first burst. Kira returned fire, suppressing the enemy position, but it was too late. She held him as he died, his blood soaking into the sand, his last words an apology for not seeing the trap. The investigation cleared her of wrongdoing. Rules of engagement had been followed. The hesitation was understandable given the target's age. But Kira knew the truth. Her hesitation had killed Rivera. Her moment of humanity had cost a good man his life. She requested discharge 6 weeks later. Honorable. Medical separation for psychological trauma. The Corps let her go without argument. Snipers who hesitated were worse than useless. They were dangerous. Kira woke at 1400 hours to the sound of helicopters overhead. She dressed quickly and checked her phone. No messages, no alerts, just the normal operational rhythm of a forward base. She stepped outside and saw the medevac birds departing. More wounded coming in. Her shift started at 1800, but she would go in early to help with intake. The hospital was controlled chaos when she arrived. 6 new patients from an ambush 20 kilometers north. Dr. Vega barked orders while Danny and 2 other medics worked frantically to stabilize the wounded. Margaret coordinated the organized madness with decades of experience. Kira joined without announcement, sliding into the workflow like she had always been there. She took the worst case, a sergeant with a sucking chest wound and deteriorating vitals. Her hands moved with the same precision she had once applied to rifle maintenance. Seal the wound. Establish airway. Large bore for access. Fluid resuscitation. The sergeant gasped, and his oxygen saturation began climbing. "You're going to be fine," she told him. "Stay with me." His eyes focused on her face. "You promise?" "I promise." And she meant it. This was her penance. Every life saved balanced against the one she had failed to protect. 3 hours later, all 6 patients were stabilized. Dr. Vega caught her arm as she was updating charts. "Where did you learn to manage a tension pneumothorax like that?" "That was field medicine, not hospital nursing." Kira kept her expression neutral. "I did a rotation in emergency services before transferring here." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Well, we are lucky to have you. That sergeant would not have made it without your intervention." After he walked away, Danny approached with 2 cups of terrible coffee. "That was incredible," he said. "The way you just took control. I have never seen anything like it." "Experience," Kira replied, accepting the coffee. "You will develop the same instincts with time." "Can I ask you something personal?" She tensed but kept her voice casual. "Of course. Why did you choose to deploy here? I mean, you could work anywhere. Stateside hospitals pay better. Less danger. Better hours. Why FOB Skin?" Kira looked around the tent at the wounded men in various states of recovery. "Because these soldiers do not get to choose where they serve. Someone needs to be here for them when they get hurt." It was a true answer, just not the complete answer. The complete answer involved guilt and penance, and the need to be somewhere remote enough that her past could not follow. FOB Skin was as remote as military medicine got. That evening, Kira filed her security report with the base operations center. She described the suspicious vehicle, the fence line photography, the distant explosion. The operations officer, a tired-looking captain named Morrison, took notes with obvious skepticism. "Did you get a clear photograph of this individual?" he asked. Kira showed him the images on her phone. The resolution was poor in the low light, but the behavior was clear. Morrison sighed. "Lieutenant Okonma, I appreciate your vigilance. But local contractors check our fence lines all the time. We pay them to maintain the perimeter. And as for the explosion, we had reports of a controlled detonation by end of day, teams 25 kilometers west. Nothing to be concerned about. The distance was wrong. The direction was wrong." But Kira recognized a dismissal when she heard one. "Understood, sir. Just wanted to document what I observed. And it is noted. But I need you to understand our security posture. We have 8 guard posts, roving patrols, and sensor systems. If there was a credible threat, we would know about it." Kira did not argue. She had learned that people rarely believed warnings until the threat became kinetic. She thanked Morrison for his time and left. Margaret caught her outside the operations center. "I heard you filed a security report. Word travels fast. This is a small base. Everything travels fast." Margaret's expression was concerned rather than critical. "Kira, I know you mean well, but you cannot keep seeing threats everywhere. This hypervigilance is going to burn you out. I saw something suspicious. I reported it. That is all." "Is it?" Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice. Is this about whatever happened to you before you came here? Whatever you were running from? Kira met her eyes. I'm not running from anything. I'm here to do my job. Then do your job. Take care of patients. Leave security to security. She softened her tone. I am saying this because I care about you. You are the best nurse I have ever worked with. But you carry something heavy, and I worry it is going to crush you eventually. After Margaret left, Kira stood alone in the gathering darkness. The older nurse was not wrong. She did carry something heavy. The weight of 89 kills. The weight of one failure. The weight of knowing that her instincts had been honed in environments where hesitation meant death. She returned to the hospital and began her shift. The routine embraced her. Medication rounds, wound care, vital sign monitoring, patient comfort. For hours she was just Lieutenant Okama, dedicated nurse, nothing more. At 2300 hours, the power flickered again. Longer this time. 5 full seconds of darkness before the backup generator engaged. When the lights returned, Kira was already at the window, scanning the perimeter. Everything appeared normal. Guards at their posts. Lights illuminating the fence line. But something felt wrong. She could not articulate what. Just a sensation of wrongness that prickled at the base of her skull. Danny joined her at the window. That is the 3rd power issue this week. Think we need to get the generators serviced? Probably, Kira said. But she was not thinking about generators. She was thinking about how power disruptions created patterns. How patterns could be studied. How studying defensive patterns was the first step in planning an attack. She spent the rest of her shift dividing attention between patients and periodic checks of the security monitors in the administrative office. Margaret would disapprove if she knew, but Kira could not shake the feeling that something was building. At 0300 hours, she noticed activity on the eastern perimeter camera. The same contractor truck from the previous night, parked in almost the same location. The driver outside, ostensibly checking something. But again, the movements were wrong. Kira documented everything. Timestamps, vehicle description, driver behavior. She would file another report in the morning, knowing it would likely be dismissed again. But documentation mattered. When something eventually happened, there would be a record that someone had tried to warn them. As dawn approached and her shift ended, Kira completed her handoff with meticulous detail. She walked to her quarters through the early morning light, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. In her room, she allowed herself to look at the photograph one more time. I see it coming, she told Rivera's frozen smile. I do not know what it is yet, but I see it. And this time I will not hesitate. This time I will protect them. She secured the photograph and tried to sleep. But her mind was already cataloging defensive positions, calculating fields of fire, identifying vulnerabilities in the base perimeter. The nurse might need rest, but the sniper was preparing for war. Captain Morrison dismissed her second security report with barely concealed irritation. Lieutenant, I have reviewed your concerns and consulted with our intelligence section. There is no credible threat to this facility. The contractor you observed is employed by us. His presence is authorized and documented. Kira stood at attention in the operations center, knowing that pushing further would only damage her credibility. Understood, sir. I apologize for the unnecessary reports. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Look, I get it. You care about the people here. That is commendable. But we have professionals handling security. Your job is keeping patients alive, and from what I hear, you are exceptional at it. Focus on that. She left the operations center knowing nothing would change. The base would continue its routines. The guards would maintain their patterns. And if she was wrong about the threat, everyone would continue safely. But if she was right, people would die while following procedures that assumed security was someone else's responsibility. Back at the hospital, Kira began making preparations that would appear routine to anyone watching. She reorganized the supply closet, moving critical items to locations that would be accessible during a crisis. Trauma supplies near each bed. Emergency medications in multiple caches. Portable equipment positioned for rapid deployment. What are you doing? Danny asked, watching her rearrange an entire shelf of supplies. Improving efficiency, Kira replied. If we have another mass casualty event, We need faster access to critical materials. Makes sense. He joined her, following her instructions without question. This was why she appreciated working with Danny. He trusted her judgment without needing detailed explanations. While they worked, Kira was actually creating a supply distribution that would support defensive medicine. Materials staged for treating injuries while under fire. Equipment positioned to allow treatment without exposing caregivers to potential threats. The hospital reorganization was tactical preparation disguised as quality improvement. Margaret appeared during the reorganization, arms crossed, expression skeptical. Redecorating? Streamlining our response capability, Kira said. Right? Margaret walked the length of the tent, studying the changes. Then she turned back to Kira with a penetrating stare. You're preparing for something. I am preparing for better patient outcomes. Do not lie to me. I have been doing this for 27 years. I know the difference between quality improvement and combat readiness. She moved closer, lowering her voice. What do you know that I do not? Kira weighed her options. Margaret was the senior nurse, her direct supervisor, and someone whose trust she valued. But revealing too much would raise questions about how a nurse possessed tactical knowledge. I have a bad feeling, Kira said carefully. Nothing concrete, just instinct. And I would rather be prepared for something that does not happen than unprepared for something that does. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Your bad feeling would not have anything to do with whoever you were before you became a nurse, would it? The question hung in the air. Kira met her gaze steadily. We have all been someone before we became who we are now. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give. Margaret sighed. Fine. Keep your secrets. But if there is genuinely something to worry about, I need to know. These people are my responsibility too. If I learn anything concrete, you will be the first person I tell. That seemed to satisfy Margaret enough to drop the subject. She helped finish the reorganization without further comment. But Kira noticed that the older nurse paid careful attention to where everything was placed, memorizing the new layout with professional efficiency. That evening, Kira made a decision that crossed a line she had sworn not to cross. She waited until the hospital was quiet, then accessed a storage area restricted to senior medical staff. In the back, behind outdated equipment and expired supplies, she found what she was looking for. A footlocker marked for disposal, but never removed. Inside was her past. The M110 semi-automatic sniper rifle she had carried for 3 deployments. When she had separated from the Corps, she should have turned in all weapons. But Rivera's rifle had somehow ended up in her possession. A clerical error during the chaos after his death. She had kept it, unable to let go of the last physical connection to her former life. She had brought it to FOB skin in pieces, smuggled in personal effects across multiple shipments, reassembled it in secret, hidden it where no one would think to look. For 3 years it had remained untouched. A relic, a reminder, a last resort she had sworn never to use. Kira opened the case and ran her hands over the weapon. The metal was cool under her fingers. She had maintained it meticulously despite never intending to fire it. Old habits died hard. The muscle memory of disassembly and cleaning was as natural as breathing. She checked the action, examined the scope, counted the ammunition she had similarly hoarded. 200 rounds. Enough for what might be needed if her instincts proved correct. She reassembled everything, secured the case, and returned it to its hiding place. Walking back to the ward, guilt settled heavy in her chest. She was a nurse now. That life was supposed to be behind her. But the same instincts that made her an effective sniper made her certain that violence was coming to FOB skin. And when it arrived, bedside manner would not save lives. The next night brought confirmation she did not want. At 2200 hours, the base communication system experienced interference. Nothing dramatic, just periodic static and drop connections. The communications officer blamed atmospheric conditions and promised to investigate in the morning. But Kira recognized electronic warfare preparation when she encountered it. Someone was testing the base's communication frequencies, identifying channels, measuring response times, mapping the electronic infrastructure the same way they had been mapping the physical infrastructure. She documented everything in a personal log, knowing that official reports would be dismissed. Timestamps, observations, patterns. When the attack came, if she survived, there would be evidence that it had been predictable. At 100 hours, Kira made a perimeter check disguised as a walk to clear her head. She observed the guard post from a distance. 8 soldiers responsible for 2 kilometers of fence line. They followed predictable patrol patterns, changed shifts at predictable times. Even their breaks followed a schedule that could be easily studied and exploited. She noticed something else. The eastern fence section, where the contractor truck had repeatedly appeared, had a blind spot in camera coverage. A small gap where the angles did not quite overlap. Someone who knew where to look could approach that section with minimal detection risk. Kira photographed the gap with her phone, then continued her walk. When she returned to the hospital, Danny was restocking supplies using the new organization system. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. "Thinking too much," she replied. "You should go rest. Long shift tomorrow. Actually, I wanted to ask you something." He set down the supplies and faced her. "You have been acting different the past few days. More intense, like you were waiting for something bad to happen." Kira considered deflecting, then decided Danny deserved some truth. "Do you trust your instincts?" "What do you mean?" "When something feels wrong, even if you cannot explain why, do you trust that feeling?" Danny thought about it. "My brother always said to trust your gut in combat. That instinct is your subconscious processing things your conscious mind has not caught up to yet." He paused. "Is your gut telling you something is wrong here?" "Yes." "Then I trust you. What do you need me to do?" The question surprised her. No pushback, no demand for evidence, just trust and willingness to help. She felt a flash of the bond she had once shared with Rivera, the kind of partnership that required no explanations. "Learn where everything is in the new supply layout," Kira said. "If things go sideways, we need to be able to grab critical materials without thinking. Also, start thinking about how you would treat patients if normal procedures were not available. Field medicine, improvisation under pressure. You think we might lose power or something? I think we should be prepared for anything." Danny nodded slowly. "My brother used to tell me stories about field hospitals during heavy fighting. Said the medical personnel were some of the bravest people he ever met, treating wounded while rounds were still flying." "Your brother sounds like he was a smart man." "He was." Danny's expression clouded. "He did not make it home from his second deployment. I am sorry. It is why I became a medic. Wanted to save people the way someone tried to save him. Did not work, but at least someone tried." Kira placed a hand on his shoulder. "That impulse, to help even when it is dangerous, that is what separates good medical personnel from great ones. Your brother would be proud of who you have become." After Danny left to get rest, Kira remained in the quiet hospital. She checked on each patient, adjusted monitors, made small comfort improvements. These men had volunteered to serve, had gotten injured doing their duty, and now depended on her to keep them alive. That responsibility superseded everything else. At 300 hours, the base perimeter alarm triggered. Kira was at the window immediately. She watched as guards responded to the eastern section, the same area she had been monitoring. After 15 minutes, the alarm was cleared. False trigger, animal or debris. But Kira knew better. That was a probe. Testing response times, observing guard procedures, confirming routes and reactions. The pieces were falling into place. The surveillance, the power disruptions, the communication interference, the perimeter tests. Someone was planning to hit FOB skin. And based on the systematic preparation, they were not amateurs. This would be coordinated, professional, deadly. She returned to her patients and continued her shift. As dawn approached, she made a final decision. Tonight, she would move the rifle from storage to a more accessible location. She would prepare fallback positions within the hospital. She would do everything possible to be ready. Because Captain Morrison might not believe her. Base security might not see the threat. But Kira Okama had been a Marine Scout sniper before she became a nurse. And every instinct she possessed was screaming that war was coming to her hospital. This time, she would not hesitate. This time, she would protect them, no matter what it cost her. The perimeter breach was discovered at 0600 hours, not by guards or sensors, but by a maintenance crew who noticed fresh boot prints in the dust near the eastern fence. The prints led to a section where wire cutters had carefully separated 3 links, creating a gap barely visible to casual inspection. Captain Morrison called an emergency security briefing. Kira attended as hospital liaison, standing at the back of the operations center while Morrison addressed his staff. "Someone penetrated our perimeter last night," he said, his earlier dismissiveness replaced with tight concern. "They cut the fence, entered the base, and withdrew without detection. We are implementing enhanced security protocols effective immediately." The irony was not lost on Kira. 3 days of warnings ignored, now scrambling to address a threat that had been probing their defenses systematically. But she remained silent, knowing that Morrison's pride would not welcome reminders of dismissed reports. After the briefing, Margaret pulled her aside. "You knew this was coming." It was not a question. Kira simply nodded. "How?" Margaret's voice was low, urgent. "How does a nurse recognize surveillance patterns and perimeter testing?" Kira met her eyes. "I was not always a nurse. That much is obvious. The question is what you were before and whether it matters to what is happening now." Before Kira could respond, Danny ran up, slightly out of breath. "LT, we have a problem. The local contractor who delivers our medical supplies just collapsed outside the front gate. Guards found him convulsing. They are bringing him to us now." They rushed to the hospital entrance. Within minutes, 2 guards carried in a middle-aged Afghan man, his body racked with tremors, foam at the corners of his mouth. Kira recognized the symptoms immediately. Poisoning. Fast-acting neurotoxin. "Get him on the bed," she ordered. "Danny, prepare atropine and pralidoxime." "Margaret, establish 4 access." "Move." They worked with practiced efficiency, fighting to stabilize a man whose nervous system was shutting down. Dr. Vega arrived and took over primary care, but Kira remained close, monitoring vitals, anticipating needs. "Who is he?" Vega asked while administering antidotes. "Hamid Rezai," one of the guards answered. "He has been our logistics contractor for 2 years. Completely vetted. Trusted." Kira caught the guard's sleeve. "Has he been acting unusual lately? Any changes in behavior or routine?" The guard thought about it. "Actually, yes. Past week or so he seemed nervous. Jumpy. We figured he was having family problems." Kira looked down at Rezai's pale face. This man had been the one photographing the fence line, the one conducting surveillance. But he had not done it willingly. Someone had compromised him, forced him to gather intelligence. And now that his usefulness had ended, they had eliminated him to prevent him from revealing anything. She leaned close to Rezai's ear. "Who did this to you? Who forced you to help them?" His eyes cracked open, pupils dilated, struggling to focus. "Please," he whispered in broken English. "They have my daughter. They said if I do not help, they kill her. I had no choice. Where is your daughter now?" He coughed, body convulsing again. "Village, 10 kilometers south. Please, save her. We will find her," Kira promised. "Who are they? Who forced you?" "Wardak. Zahir Wardak. He knows you are here. He planned this for you." The name hit Kira like a physical blow. Zahir Wardak. She knew that name. Every coalition sniper knew that name. An insurgent commander who specialized in asymmetric warfare and had a particular hatred for American sharpshooters. He had lost 2 brothers to sniper fire and had sworn revenge against every Marine marksman in Afghanistan. But how did he know she was here? Her record showed only nursing credentials. Her sniper history was sealed, unless someone had talked, unless her past had caught up despite every precaution. Rezai's heart rate spiked. Vega called out vitals deteriorating despite treatment. They worked frantically, but the poison was too advanced, the exposure too severe. Rezai died at 0643, his last words a plea to save his daughter. Kira stood over his body, mind racing. Wardak knew she was here, had known long enough to plan an attack, specifically targeting the hospital, which meant this was not random terrorism. This was personal. Wardak was coming for her, and everyone in this facility was collateral damage in his vendetta. She pulled Morrison aside immediately. Captain, I need to speak with you privately. Right now, in his office, Kira made a decision that would change everything. Sir, I have not been completely honest about my background. Morrison's expression hardened. Explain. Before I was a nurse, I was a Marine. Scout sniper. 3 deployments. 89 confirmed kills. I separated and entered nursing, but I never disclosed my combat history in my personnel files. His face flushed with anger. You lied on your application. Concealed military service. Do you have any idea how serious that is? I understand the implications. But right now, that is not what matters. Zahir Wardak is planning to attack this base specifically because I am here. Rizai was compromised to gather intelligence for that attack. Everything I have been reporting, the surveillance, the probing, it is all part of Wardak's preparation. Morrison stared at her. You're telling me there is an insurgent commander out there with a personal grudge against you? Yes, sir. And he is planning to attack a forward operating base to get to one nurse? He is planning to attack to kill a sniper who he believes is responsible for his brother's deaths. The fact that I am now a nurse will not matter to him. Morrison sat heavily in his chair. This is unbelievable. I need to verify this. Contact intelligence. Investigate your claims. There's no time for that. Rizai said Wardak knows I am here. That means the attack could come at any moment. We need to increase security, fortify the hospital, prepare for a coordinated assault. Based on the confession of a dying man and your word, which I just learned I cannot trust. Kira leaned forward. Sir, everything I reported has been confirmed. The perimeter breach happened exactly where I said surveillance was occurring. The communication interference I documented preceded Rizai's penetration. The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. What I see is a nurse who lied about her background, making dramatic claims about an imminent attack. For all I know, you're having some kind of breakdown. The dismissal stung, but Kira pressed on. Captain, I am begging you. Increase the guard force. Bring in additional security. At minimum, allow me to implement defensive preparations at the hospital. I will take your information under advisement, Morrison said coldly. Meanwhile, you are relieved of duty pending investigation into your falsified records. Confined to quarters until this is resolved. Sir, you're making a mistake. No, Lieutenant. You made the mistake when you lied your way onto this base. Guards will escort you to your quarters. You are not to leave until I say otherwise. 2 MPs appeared at the door. Kira considered resisting, considered trying to make Morrison understand the urgency. But causing a scene would only make things worse. She allowed herself to be escorted from the operations center. Danny met her outside, having heard the commotion. LT, what is happening? I have been relieved of duty. Confined to quarters. Why? What did you do? Told the truth at the wrong time. His face showed confusion and concern. This is because of the threat you have been warning about, is not it? They still do not believe you. Kira glanced at the MPs, then back to Danny. Listen carefully. The hospital is going to be attacked. Soon. Maybe tonight. You need to be ready. Use the supply organization we set up. Move critical patients to the reinforced sections. Do not wait for orders. Ma'am, we need to go, one of the MPs said. Danny grabbed her arm. How do you know it is coming tonight? Because the man planning it just eliminated his intelligence source. That is what you do right before an operation launches. You clean up loose ends. The MP stepped between them. Now, Lieutenant. Kira let them lead her toward her quarters. But her mind was already working through scenarios. She was confined but not restrained. The rifle was still hidden in the hospital. If Wardak attacked, Morrison's orders would become irrelevant. She would do what was necessary to protect her patients, regardless of consequences. At her quarters, the MPs positioned themselves outside the door. Kira sat on her bunk and checked her watch. 1,400 hours. If Wardak followed standard insurgent tactics, he would attack at night when darkness favored the attackers. That gave her perhaps 6 hours. She pulled out her phone and sent a single encrypted message to an address she had not contacted in 3 years. Emergency contact for former Marines who might need help. She explained the situation briefly, sent the coordinates, asked for any support they could provide. The response came within minutes. No assets available in your area. You are on your own. Good luck. Kira put the phone away and lay back on her bunk. On her own, the story of her life. But she had been in worse situations before. Outnumbered, outgunned, fighting battles everyone said could not be won. The difference was that this time, she was not fighting for policy or strategy or national interest. She was fighting for 18 wounded soldiers who could not defend themselves. For Danny and Margaret and Vega, who had become her family. For the second chance she had earned by saving lives instead of taking them. Night was coming, and with it, Zahir Wardak's revenge. But he had made one critical miscalculation. He thought he was hunting a nurse. He had no idea the sniper was still there, waiting beneath the surface. And this time, she would not hesitate. The first explosion came at 2100 hours. Kira was on her feet before the sound finished echoing across the base. The MPs outside her door shouted into their radios, confusion evident in their voices. A second explosion followed, then a third. Coordinated detonations at the guard towers. Wardak was here. Automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple directions. Kira heard the distinct crack of AK-47S, answered by the heavier rhythm of American M4S. The firefight intensified rapidly. She moved to her window and saw muzzle flashes lighting the darkness around the perimeter. At least 20 attackers, probably more. They had breached in force. The door to her quarters opened. One of the MPs stood there, face pale. "Ma'am, we are under attack. Orders are to shelter in place." Boots. "Those orders do not apply anymore. I'm going to the hospital. You're confined to quarters. Look outside. Your base is being overrun. I'm a medical officer, and there are about to be casualties. You can shoot me, or you can let me do my job." The MP hesitated, then stepped aside. "Go." Kira ran toward the hospital through chaos. Soldiers were taking defensive positions, firing toward the perimeter where insurgents poured through breached fence sections. Tracer rounds cut through the darkness. Explosions bloomed at strategic points. This was not a probe or a raid. This was a full assault. She reached the hospital to find it already in crisis mode. Danny and Margaret were frantically preparing for mass casualties. Dr. Vega was setting up the surgical area. The 18 patients in beds looked terrified, some trying to get up despite their injuries. Kira grabbed Margaret's arm. "How many guards do we have?" 4. The rest were pulled to defend the perimeter. For guards for 40 beds of wounded men and medical staff. Against an enemy force that had planned this attack for weeks. They were completely exposed. Danny ran up, relief flooding his face. "Thank God you were here. What do we do?" Kira made her decision. Get the ambulatory patients to the reinforced storage area. Move the critical cases to the interior beds away from the tent walls. Stage trauma supplies at each station. Prepare for mass casualties. The building shook as another explosion detonated close by. The lights flickered, but the backup generator held. Through the tent entrance, Kira could see the guard posts being systematically destroyed. The defensive perimeter was collapsing. Margaret grabbed her shoulder. "This is what you warned about. You knew this was coming." "Yes, and you know how to fight it." Kira met her eyes. "I was a Marine Scout sniper before I was a nurse. I have fought battles like this before." Margaret's expression showed shock, but no hesitation. "Then tell us what to do. We trust you." The validation meant more than Kira could express. She began directing the organized chaos with tactical precision. Patients moved to safer positions. Supplies staged for rapid access. Staff assigned to specific roles. Within minutes, the hospital had transformed from a static medical facility into a combat-ready trauma center. The first casualties arrived. 3 guards, 1 with a sucking chest wound, 2 with shrapnel injuries. Kira took the chest wound while Vega handled the others. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, sealing the wound, establishing breathing, stabilizing vitals. "Stay with me," she told the young soldier. "You're going to make it." More casualties flooded in. The firefight had reached the inner perimeter. Insurgents were advancing toward the command center and the hospital. The 4 remaining guards at the medical facility were returning fire, but they were being flanked. Danny appeared at her side, helping with the chest wound patient. LT, they're getting closer. I can hear them outside. Kira looked around the hospital. 30 people, including patients and staff. Most unable to fight or defend themselves. If insurgents breached the tent, it would be a massacre. She thought of Rivera, of hesitation and its cost, of promises made over photographs. Keep him stable, she told Danny. I will be right back. She moved to the supply closet, the one she had reorganized, where critical materials were now stored. She pushed aside boxes and reached into the ceiling panel where a footlocker was secured. Her hands found a familiar case and pulled it down. Margaret appeared behind her. What are you doing? Kira opened the case, revealing the M110 sniper rifle. What I should have done from the beginning. Margaret stared at the weapon. You kept a rifle hidden here for 3 years? I kept it as a reminder of who I used to be. Tonight, I need to be that person again. She assembled the weapon with muscle memory that had never faded. Stock, receiver, barrel, scope, magazine loaded with 20 rounds. The rifle settled into her hands like it had never left. When she turned, Margaret was still there. You're going to kill people. I'm going to protect people. There's a difference. Is there? Kira met her eyes. Tonight, there is. She moved to the tent entrance. Outside, the battle had devolved into close-quarters combat. Insurgents were moving through the base in tactical formations, clearing buildings, advancing on key positions. The hospital would be a priority target. Wounded soldiers and medical staff made excellent hostages for propaganda purposes. Kira found an elevated position near the hospital entrance, a supply platform that provided clear sight lines. She settled into position, the rifle an extension of her body. Through the scope, the battlefield became clear. Muzzle flashes, moving shadows, targets. She acquired the first target. An insurgent advancing on the hospital, weapon raised. Center mass. Steady breathing. Gentle squeeze. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Downrange, the insurgent dropped. 1. She shifted. Second target. Another insurgent flanking the guard position. Same process. Steady. Calm. Execute. 2. The guards noticed the insurgents falling and adjusted their fire, capitalizing on the confusion. Kira continued engaging targets with mechanical precision. Each shot carefully aimed. Each shot a threat eliminated. Each shot protecting the people she had sworn to care for. Margaret appeared below her position. Kira, Danny needs help. Patient is crashing. The rifle was hot in her hands. The tactical situation still fluid. But Danny needed her. The nurse needed to return. She secured the rifle and dropped from the platform. Inside the hospital, chaos reigned. Multiple critical patients. Danny working frantically on a soldier whose heart had stopped. Kira joined him immediately, falling into the rhythm of resuscitation. Compressions, medications, defibrillation. They fought for the soldier's life while gunfire echoed outside. The duality was surreal. Nurse and sniper. Saving and killing. The two roles bleeding together in ways Kira had never imagined. The patient's heart restarted. Danny looked at her with exhaustion and gratitude. Got him back. Good work. Keep monitoring vitals. She moved to the next critical case, then the next. But her awareness remained divided between the patients and the battle outside. She could hear the fighting intensifying, getting closer, then the explosion that changed everything. A rocket-propelled grenade hit the northern section of the hospital tent. The blast tore through canvas and structural supports. Kira was thrown to the floor, ears ringing. Smoke and dust filled the air. Screaming, shouting, panic. She forced herself up. Danny was down, blood streaming from his head. Margaret was helping patients evacuate the damaged section. Dr. Vega was unconscious beneath debris. The hospital was breached, and through the smoke, she saw them. Insurgents entering through the torn canvas. For men. 5. Weapons raised, moving toward the patients with deliberate intent. Kira's sidearm was in her hand before conscious thought engaged. She fired twice, dropping the lead insurgent. The others scattered, taking cover, returning fire. Bullets ripped through medical equipment. Patients screamed. Staff dove for cover. This was the scenario she had feared. The nightmare made real. Combat inside the hospital. Patients trapped in the crossfire. No way to protect them all. Danny groaned, trying to sit up. Kira pulled him behind a bed. Stay down. Keep pressure on that wound. Another insurgent appeared, firing wildly. Kira returned fire, forcing him back. But there were too many of them. Too many angles to cover. Too many people to protect. Margaret crawled over, face set in determined lines. Give me a weapon. I can shoot. Kira handed her the sidearm from the unconscious Vega. 4 rounds left. Make them count. They formed a defensive position around the critical patients. 2 women with limited ammunition against an enemy force that had been planning this attack for weeks. The situation was hopeless by any tactical assessment. But Kira had been in hopeless situations before. She had survived them by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than her enemies. Tonight would be no different. Through the smoke and chaos, she saw him, standing at the breach, taller than the others, more confident. Zahir Wardak. He surveyed the devastation with satisfaction. Then his eyes found Kira. He smiled, spoke in accented English loud enough to carry. The sniper becomes the nurse. How noble. But you cannot save them all. Choose, Sergeant Okama. Do you fight me, or do you save them? The choice Rivera had never gotten to make. The choice that had defined her guilt for 3 years. Fight or save? Sniper or nurse? Kira looked at Danny bleeding on the floor. At Margaret holding a weapon with shaking hands. At the 18 patients who had trusted her to keep them safe. She stood, met Wardak's eyes across the destroyed hospital. I choose both. Wardak's laughter cut through the smoke and gunfire. Both? You cannot be both. A killer or a healer. Choose. Kira moved before he finished speaking. She grabbed the M110 from where she had secured it and fired 3 rapid shots. The insurgents flanking Wardak dropped. He dove for cover, surprise replacing his arrogance. She had answered his question with precision marksmanship. Margaret, get the critical patients to the storage bunker, Kira ordered. Danny, can you move? Danny pressed a bandage to his head wound, blood soaking through. I can move. Then help Margaret. Get everyone to safety. I will hold them here. You cannot fight them all alone, Margaret protested. Kira chambered another round. I'm not fighting them. I'm buying you time. Now go. Margaret hesitated, then began coordinating the evacuation. Staff grabbed patients, supporting the wounded, dragging those who could not walk. The organized chaos moved toward the reinforced bunker at the hospital's rear. Kira provided covering fire, dropping insurgents who tried to stop the evacuation. Her shots were surgical, controlled. Every bullet accounted for. This was the skill that had earned her 89 confirmed kills. The ability to remain calm in chaos and deliver death with mathematical precision. Wardak shouted orders in Pashto. His men adjusted tactics, using the damaged hospital structure for cover. They were professionals, trained fighters who understood urban combat. But they were fighting on Kira's ground now. She knew every angle of this hospital, every position, every line of sight. She shifted positions constantly, never staying exposed longer than necessary. Fire, move, fire, move. The rhythm of combat that had been drilled into her through 3 deployments. An insurgent appeared at her flank. She transitioned to her sidearm, double tap to center mass, back to the rifle. Seamless integration of weapons and tactics. The last of the patients reached the bunker. Margaret sealed the reinforced door from inside. They were as safe as Kira could make them. Now she could focus entirely on the threat. Wardak's voice carried across the ruined hospital. Impressive. You truly are the Marine from the files. 89 kills. The Americans called you Ghost. My brothers never saw you coming. Kira moved to a new position, scanning for targets. Your brothers were combatants engaged in hostile action. They made their choices, as you made yours, to kill, to destroy, and now you pretend to heal. You think saving lives erases what you have done? I do not need to erase anything. I own every decision I have made. She spotted movement through a gap in the canvas. 3 insurgents advancing in a coordinated stack. She waited until they entered her kill zone, then engaged. The first two dropped before they knew what happened. The third found cover, but she had him pinned. Wardak appeared briefly, studying her position. You are good, better than the report suggested. But you are one person. I have 20 fighters. You cannot win this. Kira did not waste ammunition on a shot she could not guarantee. I do not need to win. I just need to keep you from killing my patients until reinforcement arrive. Reinforcements? Your base commander is dead. Your communication tower is destroyed. No one is coming to save you. The words hit harder than she wanted to show. Morrison dead meant the chain of command was broken. No communications meant no calls for help. FOB Shkin was isolated and overrun. The reality was worse than she had calculated. But she kept her voice steady. Then I guess we settle this between us. You and me, Wardak. Leave the others out of it. Why would I do that? My mission is to make an example. To show what happens to American soldiers who think they can kill Muslims without consequence. Your patients will die on camera for the world to see. Rage flared hot in Kira's chest, but she channeled it into focus. Never happening. She shifted positions again, moving through the hospital with tactical fluidity. The insurgents tried to track her, but she was always one step ahead. Years of training and combat experience against fighters who relied on numbers and aggression. Vega groaned from where he lay, partially buried in debris. Kira made a split-second decision and moved to him, pulling rubble away while maintaining awareness of her surroundings. The doctor's eyes opened, confused and disoriented. Stay down, she told him. Do not move until I clear the area. Who are you? He asked, staring at the rifle in her hands. Someone who should have told you the truth from the beginning. An insurgent rounded the corner. Kira's rifle came up reflexively, sight picture acquired, trigger pressed in one fluid motion. The insurgent fell. Vegas stared at her with new understanding and no small amount of fear. You're not just a nurse. Tonight, I'm whatever these people need me to be. She pulled Vega toward better cover, then resumed her defensive position. The insurgents were adapting, becoming more cautious. They had lost at least 8 fighters to her marksmanship. Wardak would be recalculating, adjusting his strategy. The explosion came without warning. Flashbang grenade. The blast overwhelmed her senses. Vision went white. Hearing reduced to high-pitched ringing. She stumbled, disoriented, training screaming at her to move, but her body not responding fast enough. Hands grabbed her. Insurgents. They stripped the rifle from her grip, kicked her sidearm away. She fought on instinct, striking out blindly, but there were too many of them. They forced her down, zip-tied her wrists behind her back. Her vision cleared slowly. She was on her knees in the center of the destroyed hospital. 6 insurgents surrounded her, weapons trained. And standing before her, finally victorious, was Zahir Wardak. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35. Educated features. Expensive watch. This was not some mountain fighter. This was an organized commander with resources and planning capability. Sergeant Kira Okanma, he said. Or should I call you Lieutenant? The nurse identity is quite creative. Did you really think you could hide from what you are? I was not hiding. I was choosing a different path. There is no different path for killers. We are what we are. You took my brothers from this world. Now I take something from you. He gestured, and 2 insurgents dragged Margaret from the bunker. She fought them, but they were too strong. They forced her down next to Kira. No, Kira said. She has nothing to do with this. Your fight is with me. She has everything to do with this. She is someone you care about, someone you try to protect. Wardak pulled a knife from his belt. I want you to understand what it feels like. To be helpless. To watch someone die and be unable to stop it. Margaret met Kira's eyes. There was fear, but also resignation. It is okay. You did everything you could. Wardak raised the knife. Kira fought against the zip ties, desperate. The same helplessness she had felt watching Rivera bleed out, flooding through her. She was the sniper, the protector, the one who was supposed to keep people safe. And she had failed again. Then Danny's voice cut through the moment. Get away from her. He stood in the bunker doorway, wounded, bloody, holding Kira's sidearm in shaking hands. The weapon was pointed directly at Wardak. The insurgent commander smiled. A boy with a gun. How dramatic. You think you can shoot me before my men kill you? Danny's hand steadied. My brother was a Marine. He taught me that sometimes you do not survive. You just make sure you take the right person with you. The standoff held for 3 eternal seconds. Then everything happened at once. Danny fired. Wardak moved. The insurgents opened fire. Margaret threw herself against Kira, knocking them both behind a fallen bed frame. The world became muzzle flashes and cordite and screaming. Kira felt Margaret's weight on top of her, felt the older nurse go limp, saw blood spreading across her uniform. No. Through the chaos, she heard helicopters, distant but getting closer. The sound of salvation arriving too late. Because Margaret was bleeding out and Kira's hands were bound and Danny was down and everything was falling apart. She had been trained to kill at distance, to make impossible shots, to be the unseen threat that eliminated enemies before they knew death was coming. But none of that training prepared her for this, for being helpless while people she loved died protecting her. Wardak's men were shouting, responding to the helicopters, organizing a retreat. They grabbed their commander, who was clutching a shoulder wound from Danny's shot. The insurgents withdrew rapidly, knowing they could not fight American air support. The zip ties bit into Kira's wrists as she struggled to reach Margaret. The older nurse's breathing was shallow, blood pooling beneath her. A through and through gunshot to the abdomen. Critical, but potentially survivable with immediate treatment. Margaret, stay with me, Kira begged. Help is coming. You're going to make it. Margaret's hand found hers, grip weak. You were both. Killer and healer. Just like you said, I failed you. I should have protected you better. You saved everyone else. That is enough. Margaret coughed, blood at the corner of her mouth. Tell my daughter I thought of her. Tell her I died doing something that mattered. You're not dying. I'm not losing anyone else. But even as she said it, Kira felt Margaret's pulse weakening under her fingers. Felt the life draining away. And with her hands bound, unable to provide treatment, unable to do anything but watch, Kira understood true helplessness. The helicopters grew louder. Reinforcements landing. But for Margaret Rousseau, head nurse with 27 years of service, help would come 60 seconds too late. The Marine who cut Kira's zip ties was a staff sergeant she did not recognize. His face was grim as he surveyed the carnage. The hospital was a ruin. Bodies of insurgents mixed with fallen defenders. The smell of blood and cordite hung thick in the air. Kira ignored him and went immediately to Margaret. She checked for a pulse she knew would not be there. Performed CPR she knew was futile. But she could not stop, could not accept that the woman who had trusted her, who had defended her, was gone. Ma'am, the staff sergeant said gently. She is gone. We need to triage the living. His words cut through her denial. Kira stopped compressions and closed Margaret's eyes. Then she stood and became what the moment required. A medical professional in a mass casualty situation. Danny first. She found him unconscious but breathing, the head wound bleeding but not immediately life-threatening. She stabilized him with practiced efficiency, emotion locked away in a box she would open later. Vega was helping other wounded when Kira reached him. The doctor worked without speaking to her, the easy camaraderie they had shared replaced by wary distance. He had seen what she was capable of. That knowledge had changed everything between them. The patient from the bunker were being evacuated to helicopters. All 18 had survived. Every single one. The realization hit Kira with unexpected force. She had kept her promise to protect them. But the cost had been Margaret's life. A major approached, uniform identifying him as the ranking officer from the Quick Reaction Force. Lieutenant Okama, I need your situation report. Kira provided a concise, tactical summary. Ennemi force composition. Timeline of attack. Casualties on both sides. Her voice was steady, professional, showing none of the grief tearing her apart inside. The major listened, taking notes. Captain Morrison filed reports about you before he died. Said you made predictions about this attack that were ignored. Said you concealed your military background. Yes, sir. I was Marine Scout sniper before transitioning to nursing. I identified the surveillance pattern but my warnings were dismissed. Why did you conceal your combat experience? Because I wanted to save lives instead of taking them. Kira met his eyes. I left that part of my life behind. Or I thought I did. The major studied her. From what I'm seeing, you saved every patient in this hospital while eliminating approximately 12 hostile combatants. That is remarkable performance under impossible circumstances. I also got my head nurse killed. The major shook his head. Witness statements say she threw herself in front of you during a firefight. She made a choice. You did not get her killed. She chose to protect you. The words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened the guilt. Margaret had protected her because Kira had become someone worth protecting. Because in 3 years, she had built relationships and earned trust. And now that trust had cost a good woman her life. We need to debrief you fully, the major continued. But right now, we have a more pressing issue. The insurgent commander, Zahir Wardak, escaped with several of his men. Intelligence indicates he is wounded and moving south toward the Pakistan border. We have a chance to intercept if we move fast. Kira's focus sharpened. What do you need from me? Everything you know about him. Tactics, capabilities, motivations. You engage him directly. That intelligence could be critical. She spent the next hour providing detailed information. Wardak's fighting style, his command presence, the way he positioned his forces, every tactical detail she had observed during the battle. The major and his intelligence officer took extensive notes. When they finished, the major stood. We are organizing a pursuit force. Helicopters and ground elements. We will track him down and either capture or eliminate him. I want to be part of that pursuit, Kira said. You are a nurse, not a combat operator. Tonight, I was both. Wardak came here for me. This is personal. I have a right to see it finished. The major considered. Your medical skills might be valuable if we have casualties during the operation, and your knowledge of the target could prove useful. He paused. But if you come as what you really are. A Marine, not a nurse playing soldier. I understand. Gear up. We leave in 30 minutes. Kira returned to what remained of the hospital to check on her patients one final time. They were being loaded onto transport helicopters for evacuation to the main hospital epigram. She spoke briefly with each, ensuring they were stable, saying quiet goodbyes. Danny regained consciousness as she checked his bandages. His eyes focused on her with difficulty. Did we make it? Everyone made it. All 18 patients survived. What about Margaret? Kira's throat tightened. She did not make it. Tears formed in Danny's eyes. She saved my life. When the RPG hit, she threw me behind cover. Took shrapnel meant for me. She saved all of us in different ways. Danny grabbed her hand. Are you going after him? After Wardak? Yes. Good. He deserves to answer for what he did. But LT, you need to know something. When I shot him, I was aiming for center mass like my brother taught me. The fact that I only hit his shoulder means I am a terrible shot or he moved at the last second. You did exactly what needed to be done. You gave us a chance when we had none. My brother always said the bravest people in combat are not the ones with the biggest guns. They're the medics and corpsmen who run toward danger to save lives. He touched the bandage on his head. You did both tonight. Ran toward danger with a gun and saved lives. I think that makes you the bravest person I ever met. After Danny was loaded on the helicopter, Kira found the bunker where her footlocker remained. She changed into combat fatigue someone had provided, the digital camouflage pattern familiar against her skin. The rifle was cleaned and reloaded. Extra magazines secured. She looked at her reflection in a broken mirror and saw the Marine she used to be staring back. Vega appeared in the doorway. So this is who you really are. This is who I was. Who I became tonight out of necessity. The doctor stepped inside, his expression conflicted. I've been thinking about what I saw. You moving between treating patients and killing insurgents. Saving Danny while shooting attackers. It was like watching two different people in the same body. Maybe that is what I am now. Two people trying to coexist. Vega was quiet for a moment. Margaret told me once that you were the best nurse she had ever worked with. That you cared about patients in a way that could not be taught. I did not understand what she meant until tonight. What do you mean? You care so much about protecting life that you are willing to take life to defend it. That is not contradiction. That is commitment. He extended his hand. When you find Wardak, make him answer for Margaret. For all of us. Kira shook his hand, grateful for the understanding. I will. The quick reaction force assembled at the landing zone. 30 Marines in full combat gear. For helicopters for transport. The Major briefed the mission parameters. Track Wardak's force to the border. Intercept and neutralize. Capture if possible, but elimination was acceptable. Kira boarded the helicopter with the Major's command element. As the rotor spun up and the aircraft lifted, she looked down at the destroyed hospital. At the place where she had spent 3 years trying to atone for her past. At the ground where Margaret had died protecting her. She touched the photograph in her pocket. 4 faces. 3 dead now. Rivera, the 2 other Marines from her team. And now Margaret, who had become family in ways the older nurse never fully understood. I am sorry, Kira whispered. Sorry I brought this to you. Sorry my past caught up and you pay the price. But I promise you this. Wardak will answer for what he did. He wanted the sniper. Tonight, he gets her. The helicopter banked south, following intelligence reports and thermal signatures. Below, the Afghan landscape rolled past in darkness. Somewhere down there, wounded and running, Zahir Wardak was trying to escape the consequences of his vendetta. But Kira Okama had spent 3 years running from her past. She knew all the hiding places, all the ways people tried to escape what they had done. And she knew that some things, some people, could not be outrun. Wardak had wanted to make her choose between killer and healer, between sniper and nurse. He had forced that choice, and the result had been Margaret's death. Now Kira would show him what happened when you backed a Marine into a corner and took away the people she loved. The helicopters flew south into the night, and in the cargo bay, surrounded by Marines ready for combat, Lieutenant Kira Okama became Sergeant Okama once more. The transformation was complete. The nurse had done all she could. Now the sniper would finish what Wardak had started. One way or another, before sunrise, this would end. The thermal imaging showed 3 heat signatures moving through a valley 12 kilometers from the Pakistan border. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through Kira's headset. Target group confirmed. 3 individuals. One appears to be injured based on movement pattern. Wardak, it had to be, wounded from Danny's shot, fleeing with the last of his men. The Major gave orders for insertion. 2 helicopters would insert teams on either side of the valley, while the other 2 provided aerial overwatch. Standard pincer movement to trap the targets. Kira checked her rifle one final time as the helicopter descended. Muscle memory from dozens of combat insertions guided her hands. Magazine seated. Chamber clear until boots hit ground. Safety on until target acquired. The routine was as familiar as breathing. The helicopter flared in touchdown. Marines poured out in practice formation. Kira moved with them, her position as designated marksman putting her in the overwatch element. They advanced through the darkness using night vision, the landscape rendered in shades of green. The Major's voice came through the radio. All elements. Targets are stationary in grid reference 7342. Approach with caution. Rules of engagement. Return fire if fired upon. Attempt to secure prisoners if possible. Kira's element moved up the eastern ridge overlooking the valley. She found a position with clear sight lines and settled into her shooting stance. Through the rifle scope with night vision overlay, she could see the 3 figures huddled in a dry riverbed. One was clearly injured, supported by the other 2. Target acquired, she reported. 3 individuals. Center target matches Wardak's build and is wounded. Unable to confirm identity from this range. Hold position, the Major ordered. Ground element will make contact. The Marines approach from both sides, weapons raised, calling out commands in Pashto and English. Surrender. Put down weapons. Hands visible. The tactical procedure for hostile combatants who might be persuaded to give up. The response was immediate gunfire. Muzzle flashes from the riverbed as Wardak's men opened up on the approaching Marines. The Major's voice cut through the chaos. All elements engage. Suppress and neutralize. Kira acquired the first target. One of Wardak's fighters firing an AK-47 at the approaching Marines. She calculated distance, wind, elevation. 700 meters. Slight crosswind. Elevated shooting position. She adjusted her aim point and fired. The insurgent dropped. She shifted to the second fighter. Same process. Same result. 2 shots, 2 kills. The skill that had earned her the call sign Ghost. Enemies who never knew death was coming. Wardak was alone now in the riverbed. The Marines closed in from both sides. Kira kept her scope on him, ready to fire if he raised a weapon. But he remained still, one hand pressed to his wounded shoulder. Target is wounded and stationary, Kira reported. No weapon visible. Ground element, secure the target, the Major ordered. Marines moved in carefully, weapons trained. They zip-tied Wardak's hands and searched him for weapons or explosives. All clear. Target secured. Kira lowered her rifle. It was over. Wardak was captured. Justice would be served through proper channels. She should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt hollow. Margaret was still dead. Morrison was still dead. All the people killed tonight were still gone. Wardak's capture did not bring them back. The Major approached her position. Excellent shooting, Lieutenant. You dropped 2 targets in low light conditions at 700 meters. That is expert-level marksmanship. I had good training. So I see. He paused. Intelligence will want to interrogate Wardak. Find out who funded this operation, what other attacks he was planning. Your involvement in his capture will be noted in the record. With respect, sir, I do not care about records. I just want to make sure he answers for what he did. He will. The Major's expression was sympathetic. I know you lost someone tonight. That nurse who protected you. This does not bring her back, but at least he will not hurt anyone else. They descended to where Wardak was being held under guard. Up close, Kira could see the pain in his face, the blood soaking through his shoulder. Danny's shot had done real damage. The insurgent commander looked up as she approached, recognition in his eyes. The Ghost, he said in English. They spoke of you in Helmand Province. Said you could kill from impossible distances. My brothers never had a chance against you. Your brothers were targeting American convoys. They made themselves legitimate targets. And I made myself a target tonight. Wardak coughed, wincing. The difference is I knew what I was doing. I accepted the consequences. Then you accept that you will spend the rest of your life in prison for what you did tonight. He smiled despite the pain. Prison? I killed an American base commander. Destroyed a forward operating base. Created an international incident. They will not imprison me. They will execute me. And I accept that too. Kira knelt to eye level with him. You killed a lot of good people tonight. People who had nothing to do with your vendetta. A nurse who spent her career saving lives. Guards were just doing their jobs. You made this personal, and innocent people paid the price. There are no innocent people in war. Everyone makes choices. You chose to kill my brothers. I chose to make you suffer for it. We are the same, you and I. Killers who justify our actions with noble causes. The words hit harder than Kira wanted to admit. She stood. We are nothing alike. Keep telling yourself that. But when you close your eyes at night, you see the same faces I do. The people we killed. The lives we took. You can wear the nurse uniform, but underneath you are still a Marine sniper. Still a killer. A corpsman approached with medical supplies. Sir, the prisoner needs treatment for his gunshot wound. Kira stepped back and let the corpsman work. She watched Wardak receive the same medical care she would have provided any wounded person. The irony was not lost on her. He had attacked a hospital, killed medical personnel, and now military medicine would keep him alive for trial. The Major organized extraction. Helicopters were inbound to transport Wardak and the Marine force back to base. Kira found a quiet spot away from the activity and allowed herself a moment of stillness. She pulled out the photograph. 4 faces now joined by Margaret's memory. All of them gone because of choices Kira had made. Rivera died because she hesitated. Margaret died because Wardak came looking for the sniper Kira used to be. How many more people would pay the price for her past? You questioning yourself? The Major had approached quietly. That is good. Soldiers who never question are dangerous. But so are soldiers who question too much. You need to find a balance. I spent 3 years trying to be something different. Tonight proved I cannot escape what I am. What you are is someone who saved 18 wounded soldiers from massacre. Someone who held off an insurgent force until reinforcements arrived. Someone who made the hard calls when everyone else was paralyzed by fear. I also got people killed. People got themselves killed making their own choices. Margaret chose to protect you. Morrison chose to ignore your warnings. Wardak chose to attack. You do not control other people's decisions. You only control your own. Kira looked at the photograph one more time, then put away. What happens now? The major gestured to the approaching helicopters. Now we go back. You write your after-action report. Command decides what to do with you. Eventually, life continues. Can it? After tonight? That is up to you. You can let this define you, or you can integrate it into who you are becoming. You proved tonight that you could be both nurse and Marine. The question is whether you will accept that about yourself. The helicopters landed, and the Marines began loading. Wardak was placed on a stretcher, his wounds stabilized, under armed guard. He would face military tribunal, provide intelligence, and ultimately answer for his crimes through the legal system. Kira boarded the helicopter for the return flight. As they lifted off, she looked down at the valley where the confrontation had ended. Somewhere in the darkness, Wardak's other fighters were either dead or fleeing. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the questions remained. Who was Kira Okama? Marine sniper with 89 kills who had added 2 more tonight? Or Lieutenant Okama, dedicated nurse who had saved countless lives? The answer, she realized, was both. And maybe that was okay. Maybe the world needed people who could heal and fight, protect and destroy, save lives, and take them when necessary. The photograph in her pocket seemed heavier. 5 people now. 5 lives connected to her choices. Rivera taught her to shoot. The other 2 Marines taught her to survive. Margaret taught her to care. And all of them had paid prices for knowing her. But 18 patients had lived because she was willing to be both things at once. Danny had survived because she could treat his wounds and eliminate the threats around him. Vega and the other staff had made it through because she had held the line. Margaret's last words echoed in her memory. You were both, killer and healer. Just like you said, the acceptance in those words mattered more than Kira had realized. Margaret had seen all of her, understood all of her, and still considered her worthy of protection. That validation from a woman she deeply respected meant something. The helicopter banked toward FOB Shkin, toward the destroyed hospital that would need to be rebuilt, toward the questions that would need to be answered, toward a future that was completely uncertain. But Kira Okama had faced uncertainty before, had survived impossible situations, had found ways to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. She would do it again, because that was what Marines did. That was what nurses did, and she was both. The investigation began 48 hours after the attack. A colonel from JAG arrived with a team of investigators to document everything. Kira sat across from them in a temporary office, still wearing the combat fatigues she had not bothered to change out of. Lieutenant Okanma, the colonel began, his tone carefully neutral. Let us start with your application to the military nursing program. You listed no prior military service. Is that correct? That is correct. I concealed my service as a Marine Scout sniper. Why? Kira met his eyes. Because I wanted to save lives instead of taking them. I thought if I disclosed my combat history, I would be pushed back into that role. I wanted a clean break. So you lied on official documents, falsified your service record, concealed information relevant to security clearances. The colonel's voice hardened. Do you understand how serious those charges are? I understand completely. I also understand that if I had been honest, those 18 soldiers would be dead right now. Margaret Rousseau would still be dead, but at least she would have company. The colonel's expression did not change. Let us discuss the night of the attack. You were confined to quarters under direct orders from Captain Morrison, yet you left confinement and engaged in combat operations. Explain. Captain Morrison was wrong to confine me. His refusal to act on credible intelligence got him killed and nearly destroyed the entire base. When the attack began, I made a command decision that saving lives took priority over following unlawful orders. Unlawful orders? An order that prevents medical personnel from treating casualties during active combat is unlawful by any reasonable standard. The colonel made notes. You engaged approximately 12 enemy combatants, killing all of them. You used a personal weapon you had smuggled onto the base. You operated outside the chain of command. And you expect this board to view those actions favorably? I expect this board to recognize that I did what was necessary to protect people who could not protect themselves. Everything I did was in defense of wounded soldiers and medical personnel. If that violates regulations, then I will accept the consequences. The questioning continued for hours. Every decision dissected. Every action analyzed. They wanted to know about her concealed service record, her hidden weapons, her relationship with Wardak, her tactical choices during the battle. Kira answered everything honestly, holding nothing back. When the formal interview ended, the colonel leaned back. Off the record, Lieutenant. What you did was remarkable. You saved lives while eliminating a significant threat. But the military runs on rules and regulations. Your actions, however justified, created a serious problem. I understand. Do you? Because the easy solution is to court-martial you. Dishonorable discharge. Possibly prison time. You violated so many regulations that we could prosecute for years. And the hard solution? The colonel smiled slightly. The hard solution is figuring out how to use someone with your unique skill set without setting a precedent that encourages others to lie about their backgrounds. That evening, Kira visited the temporary hospital set up to replace the destroyed facility. Danny was recovering well, his head injury healing cleanly. He sat up when she entered, face brightening. LT, they said you might be getting court-martialed. That is crazy. You saved all of us. The system does not always reward doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. Danny's expression turned serious. I gave my statement to the investigators. Told them everything you did, how you organized the defense, protected the patients, fought when you had to, and healed when you could. Every other person they interviewed said the same thing. It may not matter. I lied about who I was. There are consequences for that. But you became who you needed to be when it mattered. That has to count for something. Kira sat beside his bed. Your brother would be proud of you. The way you stood up to Wardak. Gave us the chance we needed. He would have liked you too. You are exactly the kind of person he respected. Someone who does what is right even when it is hard. After leaving Danny, Kira found Vega in the temporary surgical area. He was reviewing charts, checking on post-operative patients transferred from other facilities. He looked up as she approached. They told me you might be discharged, he said without preamble. Prosecuted for saving our lives. The irony is not lost on me. I broke the rules. There are always consequences. Vegas set down his charts. I've been thinking about what I saw that night. You moving between treating wounds and eliminating threats. I was horrified at first. Then I realized something. You were doing triage, deciding which threat to address first to save the most lives. I never thought of it that way. Medical triage and tactical triage are not that different. Both require assessing threats, prioritizing actions, and making impossible choices under pressure. You just operated on a broader definition of threat than most medical personnel. That is a generous interpretation. It is an accurate interpretation. Vega extended his hand. Whatever happens with the investigation, I want you to know something. You're the most dedicated medical professional I have ever worked with. Margaret saw that. Danny sees it. I see it now, too. The following day, Kira was called back to the investigation office. The colonel sat with several other officers, their expressions unreadable. She stood at attention, prepared for whatever verdict they had reached. Lieutenant Okonma, the colonel began. This board has completed its investigation into your conduct. We have reviewed testimony from 17 witnesses, examined physical evidence, and consulted with command authority at multiple levels. Kira remained silent, waiting. Your actions violated numerous regulations. You concealed your service record. You brought unauthorized weapons onto a military installation. You disobeyed direct orders. Under normal circumstances, Each of these violations would result in severe disciplinary action. Understood, sir. However, the colonel continued, these are not normal circumstances. Your tactical knowledge prevented a massacre. Your medical skills saved lives that would otherwise have been lost. Your willingness to engage a superior enemy force bought time for reinforcements to arrive. He paused. 16 personnel have submitted statements requesting leniency, including every patient you protected. Kira felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just the acknowledgement that people saw her the way Margaret had. The board's recommendation is as follows. You will receive an official reprimand for falsifying service records. You will be required to complete refresher combat training to bring your credentials current. And you will be reassigned to a new position that utilizes both your medical expertise and tactical capabilities. What kind of position? We are creating a pilot program for combat medical advisors. Personnel who can provide battlefield medicine while maintaining tactical awareness and defensive capability. You will help design the training protocols and serve as primary instructor. Kira absorbed this. They were not punishing her. They were institutionalizing what she had proven could work, creating a role that acknowledged the reality she had demonstrated. There is one condition, the colonel added. You will undergo psychological evaluation to ensure you can integrate your dual roles in a healthy way. The Marine Corps and the medical community both have a stake in making sure you do not burn out or lose perspective. I accept those terms. Good. The colonel stood and extended his hand. Welcome back to active duty, Sergeant Okama. Your Marine rank is being reinstated along with your medical credentials. You will hold dual status as both combat veteran and medical officer. Kira shook his hand, feeling the weight of 3 years lifting slightly. She was not being punished for being both things. She was being asked to teach others how to be both things. That evening, she stood at the site where the hospital had been. Construction crews were clearing debris, preparing to rebuild. The physical structure could be replaced. The people could not. She pulled out the photograph one final time. 5 faces now part of her history. Rivera and her team had taught her to fight. Margaret had taught her to care. All of them had shaped who she had become. A young Marine approached, saluting. Sergeant Okama? I am Corporal Lisa Banks. I heard about the new program, about combat medical advisors. I want to apply. Kira returned the salute. What is your background? Emergency medical technician, civilian side. Infantry Marine for 2 years. I've been trying to figure out how to combine those skills. Kira saw herself 3 years ago in this young Marine's eyes. The desire to serve in multiple ways. The belief that you had to choose one identity or the other. The program starts in 6 weeks, Kira said. It will not be easy. You will have to master both combat operations and advanced medical care. You will be asked to make impossible choices under pressure. I understand that. Do you? Because the hardest part is not the training. It is accepting that you can be both warrior and healer without losing yourself in either role. Banks met her eyes with steady determination. Then I want to learn from someone who has already figured that out. Kira smiled, the first genuine smile since Margaret's death. I would not say I have figured it out, but I am learning, and I can teach you what I know. As Banks walked away, Kira looked at the photograph one final time. Then she carefully placed it in her pocket, not to hide it, but to keep it close. These people were part of her. Their lessons and sacrifices had made her who she was. She was Kira Okama, former Marine, Scout, Sniper, current military nurse, future combat medical advisor. All of these identities at once. And maybe that was not a contradiction. Maybe that was exactly who she was meant to be. The sun was setting over FOB Shkin. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students to train, new ways to serve. But tonight, Kira allowed herself to believe that Margaret's sacrifice had not been in vain, that the lesson learned in blood and loss had value beyond the immediate tragedy. You can be both, she whispered to the darkening sky. Killer and healer, warrior and caregiver, sniper and nurse. You just have to be brave enough to accept all of who you are. 6 weeks after the attack, the new hospital at FOB Shkin opened with a dedication ceremony. The structure was reinforced concrete instead of canvas, designed to withstand assault. Security improvements surrounded the facility. But the biggest change was the people inside. Kira stood in dress uniform as the commanding general unveiled a plaque. In memory of head nurse Margaret Rousseau and all personnel who gave their lives defending this facility. Their sacrifice ensured that healing could continue even in the face of hatred and violence. Danny stood beside Kira, also in dress uniform. His head wound now, just a faint scar. Vega was there with the other medical staff. The 18 patients Kira had protected had sent letters and messages, unable to attend but wanting their gratitude recorded. After the ceremony, the general approached Kira privately. "Sergeant Okama, walk with me." They moved away from the crowd to the overlook where Kira had once watched for threats. The general was a 3-star with combat experience spanning 3 decades. His presence at this small forward base spoke to the significance of what had happened here. "I read every report about that night," he said. "Watched the interviews. Studied the tactical analysis. What you did was extraordinary. Also completely unauthorized and technically illegal." "Yes, sir. I am aware." The general smiled slightly. "I spent my career in special operations. I understand the difference between following rules and accomplishing the mission. Sometimes they align. Sometimes they do not. The art is knowing when to break the rules for the right reasons. I did not set out to break rules, sir. I just wanted to protect my patients. And you did. Every single one survived." The general looked at the new hospital. "That is why I approved the Combat Medical Advisor Program. Because what you proved is that we have been training our medical personnel wrong. We teach them to be healers or fighters. Not both. You showed us a better way. I had good teachers. Marines who taught me to fight. Nurses who taught me to care. And now you will teach others." The first class of Combat Medical Advisor candidates arrives next week. 24 personnel from all branches. They will spend 6 months learning what you had to figure out in one night. Kira felt the weight of that responsibility. 24 people trusting her to prepare them for impossible situations. "I hope I am ready for this. You held off an insurgent assault while treating mass casualties. Training a class will be easier." The general's expression grew serious. "But I want you to understand something. This program exists because of what you did, but also because of what Margaret Rousseau did. She saw who you really were and trusted you anyway. That kind of faith is what makes units survive. I wish she could see this. See that her trust led to something meaningful. She does. Every time you train a new combat medical advisor, every time one of them saves lives because of what you taught them, Margaret sees it. That is how we honor the fallen, by making their sacrifice matter." After the general left, Danny joined Kira at the overlook. "Big day tomorrow. First class of your new program. Nervous does not begin to cover it. You will be great. You saved all of us with basically no preparation. Teaching people who actually want to learn will be easier." Kira looked at him. "I want you to be part of the instructor cadre. You have the medical skills, and you proved your courage under fire." Danny's eyes widened. "Me? I'm just a corpsman. Barely survived my first real combat. You're a corpsman who kept working while wounded, who shot an insurgent commander to save your teammates, who trusted your LT when everyone else thought she was paranoid. That makes you exactly who I need. I do not know what to say. Say yes. I cannot do this alone. I need people who understand what it means to be both healer and fighter." Danny stood straighter. "Then yes. Absolutely yes." That evening, Kira visited Vega in his office. The doctor was reviewing medical protocols for the new facility, making notes on procedures. He looked up as she entered. "Come to make sure I am not overworking?" he asked with a slight smile. "Come to ask for your help. The Combat Medical Advisor Program needs medical oversight. Someone who understands both battlefield medicine and hospital protocols. I need a physician advisor." Vega set down his pen. "I am a surgeon, not a combat instructor. You are a surgeon who kept operating while insurgents were breaching the building, who adapted to impossible conditions, who understood that healing sometimes requires fighting. That is exactly what these students need to learn." He was quiet for a moment. Margaret would have loved this program. She always said medical personnel needed better tactical training. Then help me build it in her memory. Make sure her death led to something that saves lives. Vega nodded slowly. When do we start? The next morning, Kira stood in front of 24 combat medical candidates. They represented all branches of service. Army medics, Navy corpsmen, Air Force pararescue, Marine combat life saveur. All of them had volunteered for a program that promised to be the most demanding training of their careers. My name is Sergeant Kira Okanma, she began. Some of you know my story. Marine Scout sniper who became a nurse and ended up defending a field hospital against an insurgent assault. What you are about to learn is not how to be me. It is how to be the best version of yourself when everything goes wrong. She walked along the front row, making eye contact with each candidate. You are here because you want to save lives. That is noble. That is necessary. But sometimes saving lives requires taking lives. Sometimes the best medical intervention is eliminating the threat before it can create more casualties. A Navy corpsman raised his hand. How do you balance those roles? How do you decide when to treat and when to fight? You do not decide. You do both simultaneously. You develop the awareness to see all the threats at once. The medical emergencies and the tactical situations. The bleeding patient and the approaching enemy. Then you prioritize based on what will save the most lives. Over the following weeks, Kira pushed the candidates harder than they had ever been pushed. Combat training in the morning. Medical training in the afternoon. Combined scenarios that required them to treat casualties while under simulated fire. Every exercise designed to break down the mental barriers between healer and warrior. Danny proved to be a natural instructor, connecting with students who struggled with the dual role concept. Vega provided medical expertise and challenged them to maintain care standards even under pressure. Together, they built something unique in military medicine. One evening, Kira found Corporal Banks struggling with a night training scenario. The young Marine sat alone, frustration evident on her face. What is wrong? Kira asked, sitting beside her. I froze during the scenario. Had a clear shot at the threat, but hesitated because I was thinking about the patient. By the time I engaged, the simulated casualty bled out. So you learned something valuable. That I am not good enough for this program? That you care more about healing than killing. That is not weakness. That is what makes you right for this program. Banks looked up, confused. Kira continued, the hard part is not learning to fight. Any decent soldier can learn tactics. The hard part is maintaining your humanity while doing violence. Caring about the life you might have to take. That hesitation you felt is not something to overcome. It is something to manage while still accomplishing the mission. How do you manage it? By remembering why you fight. I do not kill because I am good at it. I kill to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Every shot I take is measured against the lives it might save. That calculation keeps me human. Banks nodded slowly. The woman you lost, Margaret, she helped you stay human? She saw me as both things and accepted both things. That acceptance gave me permission to stop fighting myself. Kira stood and extended her hand to Banks. Come on, let us run that scenario again. This time, trust your training and trust your instincts. Both could be right at the same time. The second attempt, Banks succeeded. She treated the casualty while maintaining awareness of the threat. When engagement became necessary, she did not hesitate. Afterward, she looked both proud and troubled. It felt wrong, she admitted. How easy it was once I stopped fighting with myself. Good. Hold on to that feeling. The day it feels completely easy is the day you have lost something important. 3 months into the program, a message came through channels. Wardak had been transferred to a military tribunal. As the primary witness, Kira was requested to provide testimony. She agreed, knowing it was necessary, but dreading the confrontation. The tribunal was held at Bagram Airfield. Wardak sat in restraints, his shoulder wound healed, but leaving him with limited mobility. He looked older, diminished by captivity, but his eyes still held the same hatred when they fell on Kira. She testified for 2 hours, described the attack, explained the casualties, detailed his actions and statements. The tribunal panel listened without expression, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When she finished, Wardak was allowed to address her directly. You think you won, he said. You think stopping me means something. But I am one man. My cause will continue. Others will take my place. Kira met his eyes calmly. You are right. Others will take your place. And people like me will stop them too. The difference is that I am creating more people like me. Training them. Teaching them to protect the innocent. Your legacy is death. Mine is life. History will remember which mattered more. Wardak had no response. The tribunal found him guilty on all counts. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As they led him away, he looked back at Kira one final time. You're still a killer, he said. No matter what you teach, that will never change. You are right, Kira replied. I am a killer, but I'm also a healer, and I have made peace with being both. After the tribunal, Kira returned to FOB Shkin and the program that had become her purpose. The first class of combat medical advisors was nearing graduation. 24 candidates who had learned to integrate seemingly opposite identities. On graduation day, Kira stood before them in dress uniform. You came here as medics, corpsmen, and pararescuemen. You leave here as combat medical advisors, trained to save and trained to fight. Remember that these roles do not contradict each other. They complement each other. You fight to protect. You heal to restore. Both are acts of service. She pinned the new combat medical advisor badge on each graduate. When she reached Banks, the young Marine smiled with pride and something deeper. Understanding, perhaps. Acceptance of what she had become. After the ceremony, Danny approached with news. LT, you're not going to believe this. We have 200 applications for the next class. Word is spreading about what we are doing here. Kira looked at the graduates mingling with their families. 200 more people who wanted to learn what she had learned the hard way. 200 more chances to turn her painful experience into something that saved lives. Margaret would have loved this, Danny said quietly. Yes, Kira agreed. She would have. And she would have told me to stop being so serious and go celebrate with my students. They joined the celebration. And for the first time since that terrible night, Kira felt something close to peace. She had found her purpose. Not as a sniper or a nurse, but as both. Not despite her past, but because of it. 8 months after the attack, the Combat Medical Advisor program had expanded beyond anything Kira had imagined. The second class graduated with 32 students. The third class had 40 enrolled. Military commands across Afghanistan were requesting program graduates for their units. Kira stood in her office reviewing deployment reports. Combat medical advisors were proving their worth in the field. Lower casualty rates, faster response times, better tactical awareness among medical personnel. The numbers told a story of lives saved because people had learned to be both healer and protector. A knock at the door interrupted her review. Danny entered with a familiar face behind him. Specialist Marcus Hayes, one of the original 18 patients Kira had protected during the attack. He walked with a slight limp but otherwise appeared healthy. LT, Danny said with a smile. Someone wanted to see you. Kira stood, surprised and moved. Hayes, you're supposed to be stateside recovering. I was, Hayes replied. Spent 6 months at Walter Reed. They put me back together pretty well. He gestured to his leg. Got a rod in my femur now, but I can still run. Still serve. It is good to see you. I came back to Afghanistan specifically to find you. To say thank you. Hayes's voice grew thick with emotion. I remember that night. Being terrified. Hearing gunfire. Thinking I was going to die in that hospital bed. Then you were there. Calm. Focused. Telling me I was going to be fine. And I believed you. You survived because you're strong. I survived because you made impossible decisions to keep us alive. Hayes reached into his pack and pulled out a framed photograph. All 18 of us who were in that hospital got together stateside. We wanted you to have this. The photograph showed all 18 men, some in wheelchairs, some on crutches, all smiling. They held a banner reading, "We lived because she fought," in memory of Margaret Rousseau and all who protected us. Kira felt her throat tighten. Thank you. This means more than you know. We also started a fund for military nurses and combat medical advisors. Education scholarships. Equipment grants. Named after Margaret. Figured it was a good way to make sure her sacrifice keeps saving lives. She would have loved that. She always believed in investing in the next generation. After Hayes left, Kira placed a photograph on her desk next to the old one she carried. The faces of the living balanced against the faces of the lost. Both groups had shaped who she had become. That afternoon, Kira taught an advanced tactical medicine class. The students were combat medical advisors preparing for deployment to high-threat areas. She was demonstrating trauma care under fire when an alert came through base communications. Mass casualty incident. Convoy hit by IED 15 kilometers north. Multiple critical injuries. All available medical personnel respond. The base erupted into organized chaos. Kira grabbed her aid bag and rifle, the combination now as natural as breathing. Danny and 3 combat medical advisor students joined her. They loaded into helicopters and launched within minutes. The scene was controlled devastation. 2 vehicles destroyed. Casualties scattered across the road. Enemy fire had ceased, but the threat remained. Standard IED followed by ambush tactics meant insurgents could still be nearby. Kira assessed the situation with tactical and medical awareness operating simultaneously. 6 casualties visible. 2 critical. For serious. Unknown number of hostiles in surrounding terrain. Helicopter landing zone partially exposed to potential fire. Banks, establish security perimeter, Kira ordered. Danny, take the 2 critical cases. Rodriguez and Chun, start triage on the others. I will coordinate evacuation. The team moved with precision that would have been impossible 8 months earlier. Banks positioned herself with a rifle, scanning for threats while maintaining awareness of the medical work happening behind her. Danny worked on a soldier with massive abdominal trauma, his hands steady despite the complexity of the injuries. Kira moved between patients, assessing, treating, directing resources. A sergeant with both legs shattered, a specialist with a head wound, a lieutenant with internal bleeding. Each required immediate intervention while the security situation remained uncertain. Movement on the ridgeline. Banks called out. Possible hostile observation position. Kira transitioned smoothly from treating the lieutenant to scanning the ridge with her rifle scope. She identified the position, assessed the threat level. Single individual with optics. Observing, not engaging. Yet, keep working, she told her team. I have the overwatch. She maintained her scope on the distant figure while her other hand continued applying pressure to the lieutenant's wound. The insurgent observer made no move to attack, likely deterred by the visible security presence and the arriving reinforcements. The casualties were stabilized and loaded onto helicopters. All 6 survived the initial golden hour because combat medical advisors had been able to provide care without sacrificing security. It was exactly what the program had been designed to accomplish. Back at base, Danny found Kira as she was cleaning her equipment. That was textbook execution out there. Everything we teach, they did it perfectly. They learned from good instructors, Kira replied. They learned from you. There is a difference. Danny sat down, his expression turning serious. I have been thinking about something. About why this program works when people said it could not. What conclusion did you reach? It works because you do not teach people to be you. You teach them to integrate who they already are. Banks was already a skilled marksman and a caring medic. You just showed her those things could exist together. That is the only way it could work. You cannot force someone to be both. They have to choose it, like you chose it that night. I did not feel like I had a choice. It felt like the only option. That is because you had already made the choice years ago when you left the Marines for nursing. You just had not admitted it to yourself yet. The next week brought unexpected visitors. A congressional delegation touring forward bases to assess combat medical capabilities. They specifically requested to observe the Combat Medical Advisor Program after reading field reports about its effectiveness. Kira briefed a senator and 2 representatives on the program's development, curriculum, and outcomes. They watched training exercises with visible interest. The senator, a former Army nurse herself, pulled Kira aside afterward. This program should not exist, she said bluntly. The concept violates conventional military medical doctrine. Healers should not be combatants. With respect, Senator, combat does not care about doctrine. The reality is that medical personnel face threats while trying to save lives. We can pretend they're not combatants, or we can train them to survive while still providing care. The senator smiled slightly. I agree with you. That is why I'm going to push for program expansion. But I need you to understand something. You created this because of tragic circumstances. The question is whether others can learn it without experiencing that same tragedy. That is exactly what we are proving every day. These students learn in controlled environments what I had to figure out under fire. They graduate prepared instead of traumatized. The senator nodded. I am putting you in for a commendation. What you did that night, and what you have built since deserves recognition. 2 weeks later, a ceremony was held at FOB Shkin. Kira stood at attention as the commanding general read the citation. For extraordinary heroism in combat and exceptional innovation in military medical training, Sergeant Kira Okama is awarded the Silver Star. The medal was pinned to her uniform, the same award she had seen presented to other Marines. Rivera had received one posthumously. Now she wore the same recognition, though she felt she had done nothing more than what was necessary. After the ceremony, Vega approached with an envelope. This arrived for you, from the States. Kira opened it to find a letter written in careful handwriting. Dear Sergeant Okama, my name is Sarah Russo. I am Margaret's daughter. I wanted to write to tell you that my mother spoke of you often in her letters home. She said you were the most dedicated nurse she had ever known. Learning what happened that night, how she died protecting you, hurt more than I can express, but also made sense. That was who she was, always protecting others. The letter continued for 2 pages, sharing memories of Margaret, expressing gratitude that her death had meaning, asking Kira to continue honoring her mother's legacy. At the end was an invitation. If you're ever stateside, please visit. I would like to meet the person my mother thought was worth dying for. Kira read the letter 3 times, each reading bringing fresh emotion. She had never met Margaret's daughter, but she could see the older nurse in the graceful words and generous spirit. That evening, she gathered her instructor cadre. Danny, Vega, Banks, who had been promoted to instructor, and 3 other combat medical advisor graduates who had joined the training staff. They met in the new hospital's conference room. I received a letter today, Kira began, from Margaret Russo's daughter. It reminded me why we do this. Not for medals or recognition, but because good people made sacrifices to protect what matters. Our job is to make sure their sacrifices continue saving lives. She looked around the table at faces that had become family. We have trained over 100 combat medical advisors. They are deployed across Afghanistan, making a difference. But we cannot stop there. Every military medical person should have these skills. Every combat zone should have people who can heal and fight. That is a big vision, Vega said, expanding from a pilot program to standard training. It is the right vision. Margaret died, defending a hospital. The best way to honor her is to make sure no other medical facility is that vulnerable. No other nurse has to watch patients die because they could not defend them. Danny nodded. So we grow, train more instructors, export the program to other bases. Exactly. Kira felt the weight of purpose settling on her shoulders. Not burden, but responsibility gladly accepted. We started this because of tragedy. We continue it because of hope. Banks spoke up. I nominate we name the expanded program after Margaret. The Russo Combat Medical Initiative. Make sure everyone who goes through it knows whose sacrifice made it possible. The group agreed unanimously. They spent the next hours planning expansion, designing curriculum improvements, identifying candidates for instructor training. The work was exhausting and exhilarating. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Danny lingered. You okay, LT? Big day with the medal and the letter. I am better than okay. For the first time since that night, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Doing exactly what I am supposed to do. Margaret would be proud. Kira smiled. Yes, I think she would. And that matters more than any medal ever could. She looked out the window at the base illuminated by floodlights. Somewhere out there, combat medical advisors were serving. Protecting. Healing. Fighting when necessary. Living the integration she had discovered through pain and loss. The journey from sniper to nurse to both had been neither straight nor easy, but had led here, to purpose, to family, to a legacy that would outlive her and save lives she would never know about. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 1 year after the attack, Kira stood in the same spot where the original hospital had been destroyed. The anniversary ceremony drew personnel from across Afghanistan. Combat medical advisors in their distinctive badges. Medical staff who had survived that night. Command officers who had supported the program's growth. A memorial wall now stood where the tent hospital had collapsed. 23 names were engraved in black granite. Margaret Rousseau's name was first, followed by Captain Morrison, the guards who had fallen defending the perimeter, and the local contractor Hamid Rezai who had been poisoned for trying to protect them. The commanding general spoke about sacrifice and service, about how tragedy could become transformation, about the 147 combat medical advisors now serving worldwide. He announced that the Rousseau Combat Medical Initiative had been approved as permanent doctrine across all military branches. When it was Kira's turn to speak, she approached the memorial wall and touched Margaret's name. The cold granite under her fingers was solid, permanent, real. "A year ago, I was a nurse pretending I had never been a Marine," she began. "I thought I had to choose between who I was and who I wanted to be. Margaret Rousseau taught me that was a false choice. She saw all of me and accepted all of me. That acceptance saved my life as surely as any medical intervention." She turned to face the assembled personnel. "We gather here to honor those who died defending this facility. But we also gather to celebrate what their sacrifice created. A new understanding that healers can be protectors. That caring for life sometimes requires fighting for it. That the best medical personnel are those who refuse to choose between compassion and courage." The combat medical advisors, standing at attention, represented every branch, every background, every reason someone chooses military medicine. Kira saw herself reflected in their faces. People who wanted to serve in multiple ways, who refused to be limited by conventional definitions. "I am often asked how we train people to be both warrior and healer without losing their humanity," Kira continued. "The answer is simple. We do not train them to be both. We help them recognize they already are both. Every combat medic who runs in a fire to save a wounded soldier is already both. Every nurse who continues treating patients despite personal danger is already both. We just give them permission to acknowledge it and tools to do it effectively." She gestured to the memorial wall. "These people gave their lives so that truth could be recognized, so that people like all of you could serve without apologizing for your complexity, without feeling you have to hide part of who you are. That is their legacy. That is what we honor today." After the ceremony, Sarah Rousseau approached. Margaret's daughter had flown from the States specifically for the anniversary. She was 32, with her mother's steady eyes and calm presence. The two women had exchanged letters over the past year, but this was their first meeting in person. "Thank you for coming," Kira said. "It means everything. I needed to see this place, to understand what my mother died protecting." Sarah looked at the new hospital, the training facilities, the memorial wall. She gave her life for something real, something that continues. "Your mother gave me permission to be myself. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that gift." "You already do." Sarah handed her an envelope. "Mom left instructions about her personal effects. Most want a family, but she left something specifically for you. Said if anything ever happened to her, you should have it." Inside was Margaret's nurse badge from her first deployment 27 years earlier. The metal was worn, the pin slightly bent, the insignia of an earlier era. A note in Margaret's handwriting accompanied it. "For Kira, who reminded me why I chose this life. Carry it forward." Kira held the badge with reverent care. "I will. I promise." That evening, the combat medical advisor instructors gathered for a private dinner. Danny had been promoted to staff sergeant and was now senior enlisted instructor. Vega had received recognition for his contributions to military medical doctrine. Banks was being deployed to train other units in the new methodologies. To Margaret, Danny raised his glass, who saw what others missed and trusted what others feared. To the 18, Banks added, who survived because one person refused to choose between protecting and healing. To everyone who believed this could work, Vegas said, when conventional wisdom said it could not. Kira raised her own glass. To the journey from pretending to be one thing to accepting we can be all things. To the courage to integrate instead of fragment. To the future we are building on the foundation of their sacrifice. They drank together, this chosen family forged through crisis and built through purpose. The conversation turned to plans and possibilities. The program would expand to train civilian emergency responders. Other nations were requesting to send personnel for training. The model they had built was spreading beyond anything they had imagined. Later, Kira walked alone to the overlook where she had once watched for threats. The base was quiet under the stars, peaceful in a way it had not been that terrible night. She pulled out the photograph, now creased from a year of handling. 5 faces stare back. Rivera and her Marine team. And now Margaret's face joined them in her memory, preserved not in the photo, but in her heart. All of them had taught her essential truths. Rivera taught her precision and dedication. The other Marines taught her loyalty and sacrifice. Margaret taught her integration and acceptance. You were right, she told the stars and the memories. I can be both. I am both. And I'm finally okay with that. Her phone buzzed with a message. Another mass casualty incident, this one 300 kilometers away. A combat medical advisor team was requesting guidance on a complex tactical medical situation. Kira reviewed the details and provided recommendations based on her experience. 20 minutes later, a response came back. Patient stabilized. Threat neutralized. Your training saved lives tonight. Thank you. Kira smiled. This was the real victory. Not medals or recognition, but the multiplication of capability. Every combat medical advisor she trained would save lives she would never know about. Every life they saved honored Margaret's sacrifice. The mathematics of impact grew exponentially. She returned to her quarters and placed Margaret's badge next to her own. 2 generations of military nurses. 2 women who had understood that healing was not passive. That sometimes protecting life required fighting for it. That caring deeply enough meant being willing to do hard things. On her desk, lesson plans for the next training class waited. 48 new students would arrive next week. 48 more people who would learn to integrate warrior and healer. 48 more chances to prove that Margaret's death had created something lasting. Kira sat down to review the plans, but first she opened her journal. She had started writing after the attack, documenting lessons learned, insights gained, truths discovered. The entries would eventually become the foundational text for combat medical advisor training. She wrote, "Integration is not compromise. When we choose to be both warrior and healer, we do not become less of either. We become more fully ourselves. The sniper's precision enhances the nurse's care. The nurse's compassion guides the warrior's choices. Together, they create something stronger than either alone." Margaret understood this instinctively. She saw a nurse who kept checking security monitors and recognized not paranoia, but protective instinct. She saw tactical preparations and understood defensive medicine. She saw the whole person and accepted what she found. That acceptance is what we offer every combat medical advisor candidate. Not judgment about their duality, but support for their integration. We teach them that the hesitation before pulling a trigger is not weakness when you're also a healer. It is humanity. And humanity is what separates necessary violence from cruelty. She continued writing until the early morning hours, words flowing from experience earned in blood and loss and ultimately transformation. This was her purpose now. Not just training individuals, but changing doctrine. Not just saving lives directly, but creating systems that would save lives long after she was gone. As dawn approached, Kira walked one final time to the memorial wall. She touched Margaret's name again, the gesture now ritual, connection, promise. "I'm still here," she said quietly. "Still fighting, still healing, still teaching others to do both. Your sacrifice mattered. It continues to matter." I will make sure it always matters. The sun rose over FOB skin, illuminating the new hospital, the training facilities, the memorial to those who had fallen. Kira stood in that light and felt the weight of her past transform into the strength of her purpose. She was Sergeant Kira Okanma, former Marine Scout sniper, current military nurse, creator and director of the Russo Combat Medical Initiative. All of these identities at once, not despite the contradictions, but because of them. The journey from concealing who she was to proclaiming it had been measured in lives lost and lives saved, in battles fought and patience healed, in the courage to stop pretending and start integrating. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to Sarah Russo. Your mother's badge is on my desk next to mine. 2 generations, same mission. She will be proud of what we built. The response came quickly. She will be proud of what you became. Thank you for honoring her by being yourself. Kira returned to her office as the base came to life around her. There were classes to teach, students to mentor, lives to save, and futures to shape. The work was endless, but it was the right work. The work that Margaret had died protecting. The work that gave meaning to every sacrifice. In a photograph on her desk, 5 faces smiled at memories only she could see. In a combat medical advisor badge on her uniform, a legacy took physical form. In the students who would arrive next week, hope for a future where healers and warriors were recognized as what they always had been. The same people choosing to serve in all the ways service required. The night nurse who became a sniper had finally found peace, not by choosing one identity over another, but by embracing the truth that she had always been both. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, or if you have witnessed medical professionals who showed extraordinary courage. Have you or someone you know served in both combat and care roles? We would love to hear your experiences and reflections on this journey of integration and acceptance.